Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today's program is about ballot questions 1 and 4. Over the last half hour, we discussed question 1, which is about gas tax indexing. Joining me now to debate question 4 concerning paid sick time for workers is Steve Crawford of Crawford Strategies, representing yes on question 4. And we have Bob Luz, President and CEO of Massachusetts Restaurant Association, representing no on question 4. The debate will begin with each representative giving a 1-minute opening statement. By way of drawing, it was determined that Bob Luz will start us off. Mr. Luz, you have 1 minute.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you for allowing us to be out here today. Well, question 4 would seem like a very easy question for the voters once they get to the polls on a question on whether to allow sick days or not. It's actually a lot more complicated once you start to peel back the layers of the onion. Question 4 would mandate nearly all employers to provide up to a week of paid sick time and family leave to all employees, including full-time and part-time. Part-time meaning 15-year-old employees in their first jobs, learning life skills, 18-year-old, 19-year-old college students that might be working at the UMass campus, 22-year-old employees that are working their first job out of school, 35-year-old professional employees in an office setting. Massachusetts would have the most broad and rigid mandate of any state in the country. The Massachusetts economy is significantly driven by the retail, restaurant, hospitality, and manufacturing industries in Massachusetts.
And that is time. Mr. Crawford, you have 1 minute.
Thank you, Laura. Question 4, the earned sick time ballot question, will provide earned sick time for every full and part-time worker. The way it works is you would earn an hour of sick time for every 30 hours worked. You could use it to go to the doctor yourself. You could use it in small increments to go to the dentist, to help your grandmother go to the doctor, to pick up your child after work if they're sick. It's a very simple, straightforward question that is part of a rising tide of earned sick time laws that are growing up across the country. New York City has one, California, several other states. If you don't have earned sick time or you know someone who doesn't, we urge you to vote on question 4, and thank you for listening.
Thank you both for that. Today's debate is Lincoln Douglas style, meaning each person will have 30 seconds to ask the other a question. There's time for a 1-minute reply and then a 30-second rebuttal. The drawing determined that Mr. Crawford will be starting us off with the first question today.
Thank you, Laura. Mr. Luz, 40% of the people in Springfield do not have paid sick time today, according to a recent study by the Massachusetts Budget and Policy Center. The numbers are equally high in Holyoke and Chicopee. You're on the record as saying that workers who bosses currently don't provide them with sick time should simply go look for other employment. But people in those communities know that there are not a lot of job options out here in Western Mass. And my question is, what do you say to those workers as an advocate against question 4 and earned sick time for everyone in Western Mass?
Yep. So Steve, thanks for the question. First of all, it should be said, we're not against sick time for full-time employees. We believe that the mandated ballot question has significant problems because it covers all employees equally, and there's a big difference from the employee that I talked about earlier at 15 hours working his or her first job to the full-time employee in a professional office setting. And there's just significant differences. When you look at the service industries, the industries I talked about, the problem becomes even more compounded because you have to replace the worker that is out sick, so it's twice the cost. Shift swapping has been the norm. It's worked forever. Especially the younger employees, are learning life skills, are learning how to be responsible, how to make sure that they come to a shift or that they help their employer out and let them know that they're going to be sick. This mandate would not require employees to provide any notice whatsoever. So we think it's just a one-size-fits-all, and it's going to be very, very difficult to work within.
And Mr. Crawford, you have a rebuttal.
Mr. Luz, you claim that you're not against sick time, but for the last 10 years, when bills have been debated on Beacon Hill, you and your lobbyist friends have defeated them every single time. You've been able to prevent them from ever reaching the floor. And in fact, worse than that is you've never offered your own bill or even offered an amendment to one of the bills that would provide earned sick time. That's why we've had to go to the ballot. Why should people believe you now when you say you're not against sick time?
And that is time. Mr. Luz, it's your question.
First of all, Steve, I'm never going to apologize for standing up for small business down at the State House. I'll say today the same thing that I said at the public hearing. Mandated sick leave for all employees.
Is this your question? You have to ask a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I thought I was getting a rebut. For 1 in 3 Americans, a restaurant job is a person's first employment opportunity. Employees gain experience, accountability, and responsibility, and valuable skills that they will take with them throughout their whole career, whether they start in the industry or move on. With teenage unemployment rate at nearly 3 times the regular rate of unemployment, why make it harder for youths to get jobs? Steve, why does a 15 or 16-year-old kid in their first job need up to 5 days of paid sick leave?
Well, they certainly need more than none. Which is what the law is now. And just to respond to something you said earlier, this bill provides for people to swap shifts. It's written right into the bill. You suggest that would be eliminated under this legislation. It wouldn't. It's something this is a very carefully crafted bill that caps the number of hours that you could earn at 40 hours a year. For people who are starting a new job, that 15-year-old, they can't take sick time for the first 90 days. Any manager in a fast food restaurant that's worth their salary knows whether that person's going to work out or not. So to focus on the 15-year-old kid and ignore the 33-year-old mother who's mother of 4 who's working at a fast food place and can't take time off to go pick them up from school when they're sick really distorts what the issue is here.
Yeah, and so, Steve, I'm not saying that, and what I'm saying is it is a very complicated issue, as you point out. There is a difference between the 15-year-old worker and the 33-year-old mother, and that has to be something that has to be looked at and can't unilaterally be covered under one ballot question. That's our biggest problem with it, Steve. It's very, very important, we think, that the legislature get involved so that both parties, the nuances involved, and the nuances involved with each employee and employer can be looked at and measured.
And Mr. Crawford, your question.
Okay. Bob, your organization currently has a very deceptive ad on YouTube that portrays photos of businesses based in Illinois and even the Ukraine as being Massachusetts opponents of earned sick time. Will you promise to take this ad down immediately and go out and find real Massachusetts businesses who support your position?
No, I won't, as a matter of fact, and I'm glad you brought it up. First of all, I would advocate that people look at the ad themselves at www.votenoandquestion4.org to see that this is just a representation. As you well know, you're a well-paid media consultant. Using stock photos is the norm in the industry. We're being outspent on this 20 to 1, and we had no budget, and we worked within the budget that we were able to. It's only meant to be a representation of what this bill will be. By no means did it ever say this is an actual Massachusetts business.
Mr. Crawford, your rebuttal.
Anybody who watches that ad would appreciate my point that it's a deceptive ad. The points that you make in the ad are simply not true. You do portray businesses that are based in another state as being from Massachusetts. And we think it should come down. Our ads will be going up today or tomorrow. All of them have Massachusetts people and Massachusetts employers, and we think that the restaurant, the retail, the businesses should do the same.
And that's time. Mr. Luz, it's your question.
Sure. Steve, everyone gets sick once in a while and needs to take a day off. And the vast majority of employers do offer some sort of paid leave for their full-time employees especially. But this ballot question will allow employees to leave in 1 or 2 hour increments in the middle of a shift without any notification prior to their employer. Steve, why can employees be allowed to take 1 or 2 hour increments? Why should they be allowed to take 1 or 2 hour increments in the middle of the shift unless it's an emergency situation when clearly someone is very sick, which right now is always taken care of?
Well, it's not always taken care of, and that's why we've written the law this way, so that people, there are currently 450,000 people in this state, a lot of them in Western Mass, who don't earn any sick time at all. And if their child is sick and they need to take an hour or two, get them out of school so that everybody doesn't get their disease till their spouse can come home and cover the family, they're in danger of losing their jobs, right? And we think that the flexibility built into the law that allows people to take 1 or 2 hours protects small businesses, so you can go take care of your family needs and then go back to work and minimize the cost to the employer.
Yeah, now that works except for situations like when you and your wife are out to dinner on a Friday night at 8 o'clock and the 22-year-old server gets a text that says, "I got an extra ticket for the concert tonight, can you get out of work?" That's going to put the guest at risk, yourself and your wife. That's going to put the manager at risk, and most importantly, it's going to put the rest of the employees at risk. It's just not fair. That's one of the problems that a one-size-fits-all mandate is going to show up.
Mr. Crawford, it's your question.
Currently, there are sick time laws in California, Oregon, Washington, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and the District of Columbia. You frequently cite the legal ramifications that earned sick time laws can cause. Can you name a single case where that has happened?
First of all, I think the laws are on in the states, and only 2 states, California and Connecticut. In California, it's 3 days worth of leave, and it exempted state employees. In Connecticut, it's employers over 50. This would be the broadest and most rigid restraint in the entire country. We just don't believe that giving that to everyone is going to benefit the general public. We cannot cite specific instances, just as you can't cite specific instances in which people have been fired here because they haven't been
Yes, I can.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I can. I was just.
Who is it?
There was just an interview last night on public television in Boston of an airport worker at Logan Airport who worked outside as a baggage handler and was fired from his position because he was not allowed any sick time. And if you want me to line up a dozen more, I'm happy to. But the fact of the matter is, my question is, you cannot cite a single case where there has been a legal action in states where these laws exist. And I would like you to stop doing it. You also can't find any employers who will appear in your ad, and you always come up with, the bad employees. When I've I've restrained myself in not talking about bad employers.
Thank you. Mr. Luz, it's your question to ask him.
Sure. Steve, it seems to me that the proponents of this ballot question, which are the big unions, that they've used very little energy to try and pass this bill in the legislature, as you said. The big unions are well known for bringing busloads of people to the State House to pack public hearings, yet when the bill was heard, the hearing room was nearly empty. Can you tell me why this question is on the ballot and why the unions haven't worked through the legislature?
Yeah, the initiative petition process that allows us to go to the ballot as voters and try to get bills passed was passed 100 years ago, and the debate at that time was around focused on the fact that sometimes business and interests on Beacon Hill get too much power and they're able to block laws. That's actually, I'll show you the transcripts if you'd like. I've read them, and it was established so that people could go to the ballot and create laws themselves. You and your lobbyist friends, as I said before, have blocked this for the last 10 years. Right? You've never offered an alternative. You've never offered an amendment. And that is why we did not try to pack the hearing room for a question that we knew we were going to have to go to the ballot on. We've collected 380,000 signatures. We've knocked on 100,000 doors and made 100,000 phone calls because we're not taking this for granted. we know that there's a lot of support out there, and we're confident that we're going to win in November 4th, because this is the right thing. This is my time's out. I don't want to.
That's time. There you go. Mr. Luz, it's your rebuttal.
Apparently you haven't been in all the meetings that I've been in where we've been talking about how do we make this work for different people, but certainly we can invite you to those.
No, I go to the public hearings,
yeah.
not the backroom meetings.
It seems to me that the proponents of this ballot question, the big unions, 18 months ago decided that they were going to help voter turnout and help a Democratic push in a governor's race that they needed it. And to quote an August 21st Boston Globe article, a small circle of union strategists decided to bring the sick leave discussion to the ballot for that very reason.
Okay, and I'm going to stop you both right there. We're off to a great start. That concludes the first part of today's debate. We are going to continue this debate on ballot question 4 after we take a short break. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. We are continuing the debate now on ballot question 4 concerning paid sick time for workers. Today we have Steve Crawford of Crawford Strategies representing yes on question 4, and we have Bob Luz, president and CEO of the Massachusetts Restaurant Association, representing no on 4. When we left off, Mr. Luz asked the question, so that means Mr. Crawford, it's your question now.
Yes, Mr. Luz, 75 economists in Massachusetts issued a letter today in support of question 4. The Massachusetts Catholic bishops also issued a statement in support of question 4. The leading healthcare providers in Massachusetts, the largest employer in Massachusetts, all have endorsed question 4. Yet your organization continues to oppose it. What do these groups know that you don't?
Well, again, I think it's a confusing question, because in and of itself, if somebody said to me, should every employee get sick leave? I'd say yes, but it's only when you realize the ballot question has all these different tentacles to it, that it's covering every single employee the same exact way, full-time, part-time. I think if they fully understood that, which hopefully they will after they see this debate, they might look at it a little differently, because I don't think that's the intention of it. I can also tell you that virtually every chamber of commerce across Massachusetts that represents small employers that cannot afford to pay twice to replace an employee have endorsed this, have come out in favor of vote no. So, you know, I think it's about looking at the entire package and getting a full understanding of it.
I think I give the voters credit in this state, and I think they know when opponents of a common sense law are just trying to scare you. What I said earlier was right. Economists, clergy, business people, healthcare providers have all come out in support of question 4. I respect Mr. Luz, but he has a job to do, and his job is to represent the Restaurant Association. This is not that complicated a law. You can go to yesonfor.ma.org and take a look at our ballot question anytime. .com, excuse me.
Mr. Luz, it's your question.
Thank you. Steve, you often cite California as having paid sick leave, and I would remind you that it's only a couple of weeks old, so there's not a lot of history there. But there's a cost to taxpayers involved here as well. Every seasonal employee is going to be covered, whether it's a DCR lifeguard, a home health aide, a student employee at UMass, working at the dining commons like I did. They're all going to be covered under this law. California exempted certain state workers after it was revealed that cost would include almost $100 million. How much is that going to cost the state of Massachusetts?
Well, the California law also does not include the exemption for small business, which our question does. If you work at a small business, a place that has 10 or fewer employees, you don't earn paid sick time. It's unpaid time. If you work at a larger employer, a place that has more than 10 employees, it is paid time. But we're sensitive to the needs of small business and the needs of taxpayers, but we also need to be sensitive to the needs of family members who lose a day's pay when they're out sick, the impact that it has on their local economy, and also to taxpayers or to the public who public employees come in contact with.
And I'd like to point out you didn't answer the question on how much it's going to cost the taxpayers of Massachusetts. And I think it's an important fact that you brought up. The unions and yourself have decided to not cover small employers, meaning you recognize there's significant cost here. And there's a significant cost when there's 10, but apparently there's not when there's 12 or 13 employees.
Mr. Crawford, it's your question.
Small businesses know that keeping money in the pockets of workers and families helps them stay afloat, right? If we are going to get our neighborhoods, all of our neighborhoods, particularly those in Massachusetts, back on their feet, we need to keep that extra $100, $150 that workers lose in their pockets. Why is your organization opposed to helping small businesses in this way?
Great question, and we're opposed to it because, again, we already work collaboratively to make sure employees can take time off. We don't think you can mandate bad employers, just like I can't mandate a bad employee. And what happens is when you have double the cost, when you have a coffee shop that has double the cost to replace a worker, or you have a restaurant that has double the cost to replace a worker, it just limits what they can give up employees for other benefits, what they can pay them, but most importantly, it limits jobs creation. 1 in 3 Americans start their work lives in a restaurant environment. 50% of all employees work in a restaurant. Restaurants have been resilient coming out of the, as has the whole services sector, coming out of the Great Recession. And if we're going to all of a sudden put obstacles in front of them, they're not going to be able to create new jobs so our neighborhoods can have well-paid people to spend their money locally.
Your rebuttal, Mr. Crawford.
You know, again, I'm just afraid that you're trying to scare people against voting. If you're one of those 1 million people in Massachusetts who doesn't earn a single day of paid sick time, you know how hard that is to support your family, and you know that you can't go out and get a haircut and an extra pizza. It's hurting your neighborhood. So, you know, the opposition is trying to scare you and your family against voting against this. This is a good thing for our economy and a good thing for your family.
Mr. Luz, it's your question.
Steve, I'm glad you brought up the number. Well, that number is nice, that $1 million number. It's nice, it's round, and it's high, and it sounds good. There's only 6.5 million people in the state of Massachusetts. There's only 3.25 million people who work. There's 1.5 million people who work at companies of less than 100, and there's 1 million people that work in companies of less than 50. And many of them receive sick leave. It seems your proponents are not counting those who receive some form of paid time off, or double counting people. Can you tell me how you get to this number of 1 million people?
This is a number that's been backed up by the Massachusetts Budget and Policy Center by looking at and other organizations, including the Women's Policy Research Center in Connecticut. It's backed up by economic and census data. It's on our website. You feel free to go and take a look at it if you want. Again, this is an example of them trying to scare people. This is an organization that can't even find a Massachusetts business to appear in their TV ad, and they're trying to scare you into voting against it. You know, or you know your sister or someone down the street who doesn't have a single day off, or someone who doesn't have any paid sick time. And I encourage you to vote for question 4, because this is not a complex issue. It's been something that's been debated on Beacon Hill for 10 years, and Mr. Luz and his lobbyists have blocked it. And this is our chance to get it, make it law in Massachusetts.
Mr. Luz, your rebuttal.
Yeah, so again, I'd like to just point out, we used stock photos. That's a common practice, as you know, as a high-paid media consultant and being involved in a super PAC. Most importantly, we're being outspent 20 to 1. We've raised $45,000 for this movement, and we're being outspent by $1 million. That's pretty significant. So, am I going to apologize for using stock photos? I'm really not. I'm
going to stop you both there. And that concludes the question answer portion of today's debate. We're going to move on now to the closing statements. By way of a drawing, determined that Steve Crawford will start us off. Steve, you have 1 minute.
As I've said, there are 1 million people in Massachusetts who do not earn a single day of paid sick time. You may be one, or may have a family member who's one. Question 4 on the ballot would allow every worker in Massachusetts to earn a very modest benefit, the ability to take time off to go to the doctor for themselves or for a family member. Most people in our economy enjoy that. I'm one. But Mr. Luz is one. We have earned sick time. And my organization, the Yes on Question 4 committee, believes that everybody should share in this benefit. We think it's good for Massachusetts families. We think it's appropriate for Massachusetts values, and we think it's good for our economy because it keeps that extra money that someone would lose if they're out sick and not getting paid in the neighborhoods, in those local businesses where everybody can share in our recovery.
Okay, Mr. Luz, you have 1 minute.
Thank you, Laura, and we appreciate being here. Again, I'd like to say it's not an easy answer. It is a very complicated one. You can't treat every business and every employee the same. Our problem is not with the question of full-time workers having sick time. Our question is that this cannot be mandated by a one-size-fits-all ballot question. And to sort of say everything fits under that one dome is going to cause Massachusetts workers and employers to have to pay more. We already pay the highest in the nation unemployment cost, health cost, heating cost, cost of goods, and at some point it just has to be looked at collectively.
Okay. Thank you both so much for being here. That is time. We want to thank our guests for being here. That concludes our program for today. We hope that you've learned something about the statewide ballot questions 1 and 4, and that this information will help you in your decision making on Election Day, Tuesday, November 4th. If you've